Sometimes when you're in the process of ending an abusive, toxic relationship, it can be very clear to you that you are dealing with somebody who doesn't care about you, who doesn't deserve to have you in their life. It can be very clear that you have every right to end this relationship and get away from this person. But sometimes it's not always so easy. Sometimes we can feel very guilty for the desire we have to get away from somebody, even when they are actively harming or abusing us. Sometimes it can be very confusing, and sometimes this guilt can keep us trapped in a relationship that, in reality, we should feel we have the right to leave. And that's what I want to talk about in today's video. Welcome to Looking Behind the Mirror, where we explore narcissism and take our lives back as we make sense out of nonsense. As a quick disclaimer, everything I say is based on my opinions and my personal experiences. I'm not a professional, and if you're really struggling, I encourage you to seek professional help. I am providing links below for you. Some examples of situations I'm talking about might be not just leaving a romantic partner, but maybe moving out of a narcissistic parent's house, or maybe quitting a job where your boss or the owner is a narcissist, or maybe just ending a friendship with a narcissistic, emotionally abusive person. There can be a lot of situations that we find ourselves in where we really want to distance ourselves, or assert some sort of autonomy or end the relationship, but we are being made to feel like we're a bad person for doing this, or we don't have the right to do this. And that shame and that guilt can really keep us trapped in very toxic, harmful situations. This can happen a lot with what we call vulnerable narcissists. So narcissists that aren't necessarily overtly abusive, narcissists that really like to engage in that vulnerable victim story. They're always the victim. Everyone's always letting them down. Everybody's always abandoning them and deserting them. And oh, look, you're no different. That can really weigh on our conscience, especially when maybe we started this relationship hearing about all the people that this poor person has been abandoned by in the past, and we felt like we were special by sticking by them, by being the one person that never lets them down. And now here we are in the same situation that all those other people were in, and now we want to abandon them too. That guilt can really keep us trapped in a situation that we really never should have gotten into in the first place. We could also feel this kind of guilt with narcissists that really like to emphasize everything they've done for us and really exaggerate the importance of all these so-called sacrifices they've made or these things they've done, right? How can you leave me, or how can you do this to me after all I've done for you? When in reality, narcissists will do things for you just for this reason, just so they can turn around one day and use it against you and use it to control you. To that, I just want to remind you that nobody can ever do enough for you to purchase the right to abuse you. No matter how much anyone has ever given you or done for you, that doesn't mean that they have the right to mistreat you or treat you like garbage. And of course, a lot of us might feel guilty just because of social pressure. Maybe we want to leave a toxic marriage, but our family is telling us that we should stay because it's just what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to stick to your commitments. Or maybe you have kids, what about the kids? Or what will the neighbors think? Or maybe you're in a church or a religion where leaving your spouse is frowned upon and you feel like you're a bad person for wanting to do this. So there are a lot of reasons that you can feel guilty wanting to leave a toxic, abusive situation. And I've been there. I have been in relationships where it was very clear and obvious to me that this person did not deserve another second of my time. And I had every right to get away from this person. And I have also been in situations where it was very unclear to me, and I felt very guilty and very confused and very trapped by these feelings of guilt and shame and confusion. And I've been in situations where And I think I read this in the book Psychopath Free, but I actually experienced this myself as well, where I have been in, well, one relationship in particular where I actually wished that this person would hit me or cheat on me or just do something really overtly obvious so that I could be free of this confusion and guilt. And I could clearly say to myself, oh yes, I have the right to leave this person, instead of being stuck in this miserable gray area where I felt like I was the bad person for wanting to be free of this relationship, which in hindsight was actually very emotionally abusive. I just couldn't see it clearly at the time. So if any of this resonates with you, I hope that some of the thoughts I'm about to share with you will help you clarify your own thoughts and your own situation and see more clearly what you have every right to do for yourself, the decisions that you have every right to make without feeling like you're a bad person or feeling like you're obligated to stay somewhere that's not good for you. The first couple questions that you might want to ask yourself are, do you think you're a good person if you stay in this situation? Do you think that makes you a good person? And do you think that leaving this person or distancing yourself makes you a bad person? If you think that staying in this situation means that you're a good person, imagine that your best friend, or maybe if you have an adult child or just somebody that you really care about, imagine that they were in the exact same situation you're in. And imagine that they say to themselves, I have to stay with this person. I have to stay in this situation. How does that make you feel when you imagine someone else in this situation? Do you think to yourself, wow, what a good person? Probably not. But why do you put that on yourself? Why do you put that on yourself to say, I have to stay in this horrible situation that I'm so miserable in because that will make me a good person? I think it's really helpful to dig into that a little bit and define more clearly for yourself what it means to be a good person or a bad person, and how you would feel if somebody that you cared about was in the same situation. And in that same vein, let's look at the flip side. Does leaving mean that you're a bad person? I will confess, when I was much younger and I was still heavily indoctrinated with a lot of ideas of what we owe to each other and how people should live, I was extremely judgmental of especially adult women that left the marriages that they were not happy in, because that was the mentality I was raised to have. You know, I was raised to think that women should stay in marriages that they weren't happy in, and that if they expected to be happy, that they were some kind of spoiled brat. You know, and then I grew up a little bit and I realized that I have no right to judge somebody whose shoes I have not walked in, because I don't know what that person feels like. I don't know what life is like for them every day and what it felt like for them to be in the situation that they left, right? And looking back in hindsight, I would hate to think that anyone would stay in a miserable, toxic relationship because they were afraid of what somebody like me would think of them, because they were afraid that somebody like me, who at the time was extremely emotionally immature and lacking empathy, because they were afraid of what somebody like me would think about them, as if I have a right to tell somebody else what they should do with their life that I'm not living in. So are you a bad person for leaving or distancing yourself from a situation that's making your life miserable? I mean, what does that even mean? I mean, maybe somebody with no awareness of your situation might think you're a bad person. Maybe somebody who has emotional investment in what you decide to do with your life, with no care for how it affects you, might think you're a bad person for removing yourself from a situation that you're absolutely miserable in. But so what? Who are these people that are actually going to judge you for making an extremely difficult decision that you know some people aren't going to agree with. Who are these people, and why does their opinion matter more than yours does? It absolutely doesn't. Anybody that thinks you're a bad person for leaving a miserable situation is somebody who doesn't care how that situation's affecting you, doesn't care enough to even think about how you might feel and what might have pushed you to make such a difficult decision. Your true friends will understand, and people that really care about you would never want you to stay in a place that was making you miserable and that was harmful for your mental health and your sense of peace. You are not a bad person for wanting to have a little bit of contentment, for wanting to live in a place that isn't miserable for you. And you can also ask yourself why somebody who is aware that you don't want to be with them or you don't want to be as close to them, why they would want you to stay. And I know there's a lot of legitimate reasons for this. You know, a lot of people, even in with quote unquote normal people that aren't abusive, you know, I mean, when you find out that your partner wants to leave, it's perfectly natural to hope that they change their mind, to want them to stay. But really, what are the reasons for that? It really comes down to not being ready to face the truth, not being ready to face the reality that this relationship isn't what you hoped it would be, right? So if you stay with somebody that you don't want to be with because they want you to stay with them, really all you're doing is helping them avoid reality. And what value really does a relationship that's based on enforcing a facade, what value does that really have? And what good are you really doing anyone by staying with them just so that they won't have to face the truth? Another thing to think about is the fact that you do not owe your life to anyone, really. I mean, except for your young children that you're supposed to be taking care of, right, until they're adults. That's different. But as for the adults in your life, you do not owe your life to anyone, and least of all, to people who don't care about you, people who are mistreating you, abusing you, taking advantage of you, manipulating you. You don't owe them anything. And it doesn't matter, like I said earlier, it doesn't matter how much they've done for you in the past. Nothing makes up for abuse. No favors, no amount of money, no amount of time or help or whatever it is they've done for you gives them the right to mistreat you. If somebody can't treat you with decency and respect, they don't deserve to have you in their life, period. And there's nothing that they could have ever possibly done to make up for that, to make you obligated to stay and allow them to mistreat you. And I don't think anyone needs to feel guilty removing themselves from somebody who won't treat them with respect. You could also ask yourself, if you feel guilty in a relationship, if you feel guilty thinking of leaving this person, do you think that they would feel this same guilt about you? I mean, the ways that they're harming you, the ways they're hurting you, do you think that they feel guilty about what they're doing to you? Would you feel guilty if the shoe was on the other foot, if you knew that you were causing them all this pain and all this guilt and all this confusion? Would you feel guilty? Well, do you think they feel guilty? Do they feel obligated to you no matter what you do to them? Probably not. So why do you feel this guilt and obligation towards somebody who really doesn't care about you? Something else that can keep us trapped in these types of relationships is the need to have our concerns acknowledged. If somebody's mistreating us, abusing us, and making our lives miserable, sometimes it's hard to feel like we have the right to leave them, aka hold them accountable and impose consequences for their behavior when they refuse to acknowledge what they've done. For instance, if somebody is very dismissive of your feelings and very demanding, and they're always putting you down, they're always insulting you, and they make you feel bad about yourself, And that's why you want to leave the relationship. But anytime you try to bring it up, anytime you try to explain this to them, they have a million different excuses. They spin you around in circles. They explain to you why you're wrong to feel that way or to interpret their behavior that way. Sometimes it can be hard to hold them accountable when they don't see it the same way. To hold someone accountable for something because of the way that you view it and the way you feel about it when they see it a completely different way. Sometimes that's difficult because it's like you're punishing them for something that in their mind isn't happening or that they didn't do. And that can really keep some of us stuck, and that's a really powerful manipulation tactic that narcissists use. Just denying reality, not just to you, but to themselves, because narcissists really believe that denying reality is an effective way to make reality not real. If they just deny that something happened, then it's like it never happened. So how can you hold them accountable for something that didn't really happen because they haven't admitted to it yet? And I think it's really helpful to exercise the ability to hold people accountable for things that they won't admit to or that they don't see the same way. You have every right to interpret someone's behavior the way that you want to interpret it as how it affects you. So if somebody's behavior is hurting you, it hurts your feelings, it makes you feel bad, and you have tried to communicate and it just won't stop, you have every right to decide for yourself that the way this person treats you isn't working for you, that it's harming you. And it doesn't matter if they agree with you or not, especially after you've tried to communicate with them. It's very empowering to let go of the need for the narcissist or the abusive toxic person to accept your decision to distance yourself from them. It's very empowering to let go of the need for them to agree with you, because an abusive narcissist is never going to agree with you that, oh yeah, you really probably should distance yourself from me. I am pretty harmful towards you. I do treat you like garbage. It's true. You've got a good point. They're never going to say that. They're never going to see it that way. You are always going to be the bad guy. This is always going to be your fault. They are always going to tell their flying monkeys what a terrible, horrible, crazy, unsupportive person you are and how you've abandoned them just like everybody else. That is going to be the narrative. You don't need them to acknowledge your experience for you to make an important decision for yourself. And narcissists are going to judge you either way. When you're in their life, nothing you do is ever going to be good enough. And when you decide to leave them, that's not going to be good enough either. You're really not losing anything, and you're really not in control of any of it one way or the other if your main concern is what they're going to think of you. They're going to judge you no matter what you do. So you might as well do whatever it is that brings you the most peace. Another thing to realize is that you can't help a narcissist or abusive person by staying with them. You can only enable them. Narcissists are kind of like addicts when it comes to their need to scapegoat people, to blame other people, to treat people like garbage. This is their coping mechanism. This is what makes them feel the most comfortable in life, is to have other people to blame, to have emotional punching bags that they can rely on to regulate their own emotions, and by using somebody else to regulate their emotions in a very unhealthy, damaging way. And when you stay with them, you're not helping them in any way. You're not doing them any favors. You're enabling their toxic coping mechanisms by staying. And it goes without saying, you're certainly not doing yourself any favors either. Staying in a toxic, abusive relationship doesn't help anyone. It doesn't do anyone any good. Even if you're in a situation where you have children together, staying in a toxic, abusive relationship for the sake of the kids, in my opinion, just teaches the kids that when they're in a miserable situation, they don't have the right to leave. They don't have the right to leave situations that aren't good for them. They don't have the right to leave people that are being abusive towards them. So in my opinion, staying in an abusive, toxic relationship for the sake of the kids actually damages the children's view of the world and the ways that they are going to feel in relationships in the future, in my opinion. I also want to say, I think, some people might disagree with me on this, and that's fine, but I really believe very strongly that you are never obligated to be with anyone in any capacity that you don't want to be with. You are not obligated to spend your life in any way with somebody who you're not happy being with, somebody that makes you miserable, somebody that treats you badly, or somebody that you just don't want to spend your time with. Life is short, and there is no reward for giving of yourself to a person or a situation that makes you miserable. There's no reward for that, because the only people that want you to stay in a situation that's bad for you are people that don't have anything for you, that don't care about you. There's no reward for that, and there's only just more punishment, more reinforcement of this idea that you're supposed to do whatever society or whatever this person is telling you you're supposed to do. And it's just misery compounded on misery. It's not like if you give in and stay with somebody that treats you badly, that they're going to appreciate that and start treating you right. They're just going to keep treating you badly and making you more and more miserable and make you feel more and more stuck in this horrible situation. Life's too short for that. And you are not a bad person for wanting to have peace in your life, for wanting to be in a place where you can be yourself and feel safe and comfortable. That does not make you a bad person, no matter how much the people that want to control your life will make you feel like it makes you a bad person. I mean, when you're ending a relationship, there are definitely ways that you can do it that are very thoughtless and mean, right? You don't want to hurt people unnecessarily when you end a relationship or distance yourself. But that's not what we're talking about here. And that's what narcissists will do. They will end relationships in unnecessarily cruel ways. And that's not what we're talking about. When you feel the need to distance yourself from somebody and end a relationship, there's sometimes no way to do it without hurting that person, or at least hurting their interests, right? But as long as you're trying to do it in the most thoughtful way that you possibly can while still achieving your objectives, there's no reason to feel guilty about it. And the fact that you're watching this video and you're struggling with this guilt just says that you're not the kind of person that wants to hurt people on purpose, and that you wish there was some way to achieve your own freedom and safety and peace without upsetting anybody else. But unfortunately, that's not always the case, especially when you're dealing with people whose stability and comfort in life depends on controlling you. Another thing to think about is the fact that sometimes you have to get out of the situation. You have to take that leap of faith in order to be able to look back on it and see it clearly. I was in a situation, like I said, where I felt very guilty for wanting to leave. I felt like I was the bad person. I felt like this person had done so much for me and was so wonderful, and everybody else in the whole world thought that this person was so wonderful, and I was so lucky to be with this person. How could I just leave, right? And I did lose a lot of relationships. I was smeared. Horrible things were said about me. And I got to a point where I had to say to myself that I would rather accept that I am all these horrible things. I would rather have everyone talk about me behind my back. I would rather lose all my social network than stay in this relationship. It was that bad. And I believed that I was all these horrible things, and I left anyway. And it wasn't until years later that I was able to look back and see more clearly that I was being emotionally abused, and that it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault that I was miserable, and I wasn't a bad person for wanting to leave, and that all the things this person had done for me that I owed my life to this person because of really weren't that big of a deal. This person really didn't sacrifice anything for me. And it took me years after I left to actually see it clearly. So sometimes you have to just lean into that guilt and take a leap of faith and realize that you have a right to leave a miserable situation, and maybe the clarity of really feeling and believing that you have that right will come later. And I know that all these things are easier said than done. I know it can take a lot of work to really internalize the belief that you deserve a chance at peace and happiness, that it's okay for you to distance yourself from people who are harming you. Even if those people don't realize that they're harming you or won't acknowledge it, you don't owe your life to people that are making it miserable. And of all the people in your life that you do have obligations to, or that you feel obligated to, never forget that your greatest obligation is always going to be the one you have to yourself. I hope this helps. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and comment below any ideas you have for me for future videos. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you like this video and would like to see more like it in the future. Until next time, thanks. Bye.